LSAC multimedia content. The information contained in the multimedia content posted, video content, represents the views and opinions of the individuals that are speaking in the video content, the speakers. The speakers may or may not be employees of the Law School Admission Council, Inc. LSAC. The views and opinions expressed in the video content represent the views and opinions of the speakers and may not represent the views and opinions of LSAC. The appearance of video content on any LSAC-operated website is not an endorsement by LSAC or its affiliates of such video content. LSAC does not make any representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy, applicability, fitness or completeness of any video content. LSAC hereby disclaims any and all liability to any party for any direct, indirect, implied, special or any other consequential damages arising directly or indirectly from any use of the video content, which is provided as is, and without warranties of any kind. Law School Admission Council Candidate Webinar Series. Law School Forums and Fairs. Recorded September 22, 2021.
Welcome to the LSAC Candidate Webinar Series. This series of webinars is designed to provide candidates with information and tools to navigate through the law school admission process and to provide relevant information and insight into legal education and beyond to careers in law. I am Giselle Joachim, Executive Director of Education and Ambassador Programs, and I will be hosting our broadcast. Today, we will provide an inside look at recruitment forums and fairs. Our panelists will share with you information about both what you can expect at these events and what law school representatives expect from you at these events. Let's get started by meeting our panelists. Mimi Wang is the Assistant Dean of Law Admissions at Lewis & Clark Law School in Portland, Oregon. Prior to arriving at Lewis & Clark, she served as Director of Admissions at the James E. Rogers College of Law at the University of Arizona. Prior to that, Dean Wang began her career in law admissions at Seton Hall University School of Law, her alma mater. Before transitioning into a career in law admissions, she clerked in Trenton, New Jersey, and practiced environmental law in Princeton, New Jersey. Dean Wang was recently appointed to the Law School Admission Council's Schools and Candidates Committee. She has co-chaired the Pre-Law Conference Planning Board for the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association and currently serves as a peer mentor in the Minority Law Network, which brings together law admissions professionals from diverse backgrounds. Welcome, Dean Wang.
Thank you.
Jimmy Nicholson is the Director for Admissions at the University of Kentucky J. David Rosenberg College of Law. A native of New Orleans, Director Nicholson received her BA from the University of Wisconsin-Parkside and her Master of Science in Education from Illinois State University. Before arriving at Kentucky, she worked in residence life at various universities as the coordinator for African American Student Services, and just prior to her arrival at Kentucky as Assistant Director for Admissions, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Moritz College of Law, The Ohio State University. Additionally, Director Nicholson has held leadership positions in the Great Lakes Association of Housing and University Officers, American College Personnel Association, Central Ohio Diabetes Association, and is a founding member of the annual meeting of law school diversity professionals. And welcome to you, Director Nicholson.
Happy to be here.
Great. So before we begin our discussion, I want to take a few minutes and outline the LSAC forum opportunities during the 2021-2022 academic year. All LSAC forums are always completely free of charge to prospective students. LSAC has 3 digital forums scheduled: Friday, September 10th, which obviously has already happened, Saturday, December 4th, and Saturday, February 5th. The hours of each digital forum is 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time to 7:00 p.m. Eastern Time, with workshops beginning at 2:00 and extended international student hours available from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. Eastern Time each digital forum day. These events allow participants to attend both live and on-demand workshops covering an array of topics, including, but not limited to, the JD admission process, financial aid information, LSAT information, and more. Participants of the digital forums also have the opportunity to visit law school booths to collect information and interact via chat and/or Zoom rooms with law school representatives, and to visit booths in the resource room for additional information and helpful resources. In addition to the digital forums, LSAC has scheduled 5 in-person forums: Saturday, September 25th, as in this coming Saturday in Chicago; Friday, October 8th in San Francisco; Friday, October 22nd in Atlanta; Friday and Saturday, November's 5th and 6th in New York; and Saturday, November 13th in Los Angeles. Registrants for in-person forums will receive a timed entry, during which time you will have the opportunity to first attend a 1-hour workshop, Law School Admission Essentials, providing you with a strong overview of basic information to get your admissions journey started. Following the workshop, participants will have 90 minutes to visit with law school representatives at the various law school booths, followed by 1 hour in the resource room. Additionally, all in-person forum attendees will be given access to the many links and resources available in the digital forum platform, including on-demand and recorded workshops, and the multitude of links and resources in the individual law school booths. I'll provide you with further information about the forums as we move through the webinar, but I am anxious to start the conversation with Dean Wang and Director Nicholson. So let's get started. First, I'd like to ask our panelists each to tell us briefly why they choose to have their law schools represented at forums and recruitment fairs. So Director Nicholson, let's begin with you.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. I think the reason why my university chooses to attend the forum sponsored by the Law School Admissions Council is because we get to meet so many different students from everywhere. Sometimes we meet our own students from Kentucky, at these forums in New York, but we get to meet such a variety of individuals from all over the United States, from various backgrounds, racial, ethnic backgrounds, life experiences. But the most exciting thing for me about attending the forums is that sometimes I get a chance to spark an interest in a student who may have no idea at all about University of Kentucky or interested in attending University of Kentucky until they stopped at my table and talked to me for a few minutes. And those are probably my fondest and happiest memories of being at forums, in addition, to also being able to serve on various panels with the Law School Admissions Council and meet pre-law advisors from various colleges and universities.
Great. Dean Wang, how about you?
Yes, I second all of that. It's the same feelings all over. This is one of the few opportunities all year long that we get to travel to a single location and meet so many different types of candidates from all different backgrounds, all over the country, and occasionally, from even our neighboring countries. This is really just such a singular opportunity to see everybody in one place, to, meet people in areas that we might not otherwise be able to travel to and connect with. So it's really a fantastic opportunity for all of us that attend.
Great. So now we've heard just a little bit about why you have your schools represented at these kinds of events. Let's switch it around and find out, what should prospective students hope to learn or achieve at these types of events? And Director Nicholson, we'll start with you again.
Sure. So I think what prospective students should learn from these events, one is about the various law schools who are there. Each of you are going to come with your list of schools that you're going to want to meet with, but you also are going to find that there are going to be some schools that are not even on your list that you're going to meet with and get to learn about. You also kind of get a sense or vibe of what it may be like at that university, because I think many of the individuals who stand behind those tables are good representatives of the type of atmosphere that they have at that particular college or law school or, city or campus. And I think you will also get to learn some things that you may not have known about a particular law school. Because if you don't have a particular question on your list, the person next to you who is asking questions may have a very interesting question that you may have never thought about asking, and that person will ask and give some information, representative will give some information. So there's going to be a whole host of information that's both printed and not printed that you are going to learn at the law school fair.
Great. Dean Wang, anything to add?
Well, Jimmy said it so well, but really it's, there's so much that you will want to learn about an institution before you decide to either apply or attend. And, a lot of that can't be learned from necessarily a website or, looking at our publications. And so use these forums as an opportunity to engage with our people. As Director Nicholson said, this is the chance that institutions get to send a representative of our communities, to the forum to meet you. And so if you're looking to get sort of a measure of the community, a vibe, the personality of the law school, this is a great opportunity to do that, to engage some individuals that are, work there and can tell you a little bit what it's like every single day.
That's great. Well, we just got a great question that I'd like to go ahead and talk with. And let's start. Dean Wang, keep your mic open because we'll go right to you. And the question is, what is the proper attire for an in-person forum?
It's a great question. And, a really good question to ask, because if you've never been to one of these things, right, you don't know what to expect. I think, if you think of the forum as an opportunity to make a really solid first impression, think about dressing fairly, formally, and of course everybody has different definitions of that, but I think business to business casual isn't fully inappropriate necessarily. I mean, this is you embarking on a first step, towards becoming a professional for your career, and so dressing appropriately and sort of in line with that future goal is a good move. I'm sure Director Nicholson, I know she has some ideas here to add too, but I mean, stay away from anything that I think might necessarily be polarizing, not trying to not be yourself necessarily, but, just consider that you are going to be presenting yourself and making the first impression on a number of people on your way to becoming a professional in the legal profession. So.
Director Nicholson, we're getting a bunch of questions about what you should bring to a forum. Should you bring business cards? Should you bring a resume? Is there anything else you should bring or should not bring?
Well, I say you should bring all of it in addition to yourself. Business cards are fine, resumes are fine. However, do not be offended if the representative behind the table will not accept your business card or resume, because different schools go about collecting their information in various ways. They may want to just receive that information electronically. Most of us will be collecting your information from your LSAT number, which will be on your badge. That's going to be the most common way that we do get your information. However, you may have other networking events with other individuals who are attending the fair that you may want to give your business card to, and or you may want to give your resume to, because they are pre-law advisors who man the tables, who can give you feedback, and your resume may be something you want them to look at. There will also be someone from LSAC Diversity Services at a table, and typically there's someone with financial aid advice, correct? Who may want to look at some information or may need your business cards. So I think it's good to have on hand because you don't know who you will meet, but keep in mind that the representatives behind the table may or may not accept your resumes and business cards.
Great. So we do have more questions, but let's go. I'm going to go a little bit more general in the questions, and then we can dig in on specific things. So how might a student prepare to attend to approach one of these events? Sort of what's expected as they approach a booth? Are they expected to have like a lot of knowledge about a law school? Is it okay to walk into the booth and say, tell me about your school? Sort of what's the anticipation here, Dean Wang?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it could be a few different things, right? So if you're somebody who's very early on in the process of, figuring out your law school journey, I mean, use this opportunity to ask questions that, capture or maybe convey some information that you can't otherwise learn elsewhere, right? Like on our websites. You really want to make the most of this time and have a really good conversation with the representative at the table, whether that conversation is 1 minute or 5 minutes, I think that for those of you who are sort of have an idea about which law schools that you would like to approach, I think it's never a bad idea to have kind of a plan or a little bit of a strategy, a plan of attack, a route for the forums. That way that you can make sure that you make the most out of your time, because I know that, time is now a little bit limited in either setting. But also, do a little research for those schools that you're really interested in. Show that. I think this is your time to show the representative of law school that you're really serious about them. Yeah.
Sounds good. Director Nicholson, anything you want to add?
I think when you are approaching a booth to meet with a representative, the first thing you want to do is smile and say hello. Because the people who are there are going to be very excited to meet with you and answer your questions. And then the second thing you may want to do is, because you have limited time, you may want to look at your list and see who all you're meeting with and monopolize your time there with individual schools that you may not be able to travel to, or maybe outside of your region, or just a couple of schools that you never thought about attending before. Because if you think about it, if you're from, I'm going to use Ohio. If you're from Ohio and you live in Columbus and Ohio State and Capitol is there, using that time at the forum to meet with Ohio State and Capitol when you only have 90 minutes may not be the best use of your time when you're in town and you can visit those two campuses. So really, really think about and strategize where you would like to go. Before you come to the forum, you can see the map and the layout and the table numbers. So kind of get yourself oriented to the room so you know in which way you're going to go during the forum. So, and don't be afraid if someone speaks to you because they caught your eye, you can speak back. Don't feel like you have to go to their table either, but it'd be nice if you do.
So I love this next question. Should this interaction at an in-person forum be seen as an interview or as a casual conversation? Sort of what happens with this conversation? How do admissions folks sort of perceive what's happening at a forum? Dean Wang?
Well, I think it can definitely turn into an impromptu opportunity, for an admissions interview. And I think it would be, frankly, a really good strategy to treat the interaction that way, right? If you kind of approach the table knowing that this is a school that you're really, really interested in, it can definitely turn into that, especially, in a cycle that's very competitive. You never know, like you can make a lasting impression that, ends up making the difference, in your candidacy down the road. But yeah, it can certainly be, it can range, of course, from being casual, like if you're just asking probing questions, you're not sure where to begin. But I think it's good to feel things out, to see what the situation is, and take it from there.
Director Nicholson, you see that the same way?
Yes, I do, because you never know who's behind the table and what their role is with a particular law school. So you don't know if they're a file reviewer or a faculty member, a prestigious alumnus, a donor. So you don't know what their reporting is going to be back and to whom about the forum. And if you are going to make an impression, a memorable impression, you want it to be one that is positive. not one that we're going to asterisk your LSAC number, but like, oh no, we need to keep an eye out for this app because it's going to be a no, right? Because sometimes that happens, at the forum. So, and then I think each school, as we're behind the table, will meet people. Sometimes after we have a conversation, we'll say, yeah, that was a good conversation. I can so see him at or her at my law school. They're going to be a good fit. They are a Buckeye. They are a Wildcat. They are whatever that mascot may be, right? Because we all know the personalities of our campuses and our law schools and know who will make a good fit.
That's great. Okay, Director Nicholson, don't go anywhere. I'm going to give you this next question. So if you're not able to attend a forum, either a digital forum or an in-person forum, and you plan on applying early, especially like you want to apply in the next couple of weeks, how can we still have the opportunity to connect with admissions counselors in order to gain more knowledge and display interest in specific schools? What do you recommend there?
Yeah, there are a myriad of ways that you can go about doing that. One, if you're still on a college campus or in a city with colleges and universities, check their career services websites or their pre-law organizations websites and look for their law school fairs that these individual schools may be hosting. Because given the school, they can be anywhere from 10 to 30 different law schools represented at that law school fair or graduate school fair. So that gives you an opportunity. It's not a forum, but it still gives you an opportunity to see a lot of different representatives from a lot of different law schools. The other thing is visit the law school's websites and look for their events calendar and see what type of programs that law school is hosting, whether it's information sessions, meet and greets, diversity outreach, whatever it may be. Or you may just want to register online for a class visit and tour. You can do that too. So the only downfall of that is that if you're a working professional, sometimes this may be a little bit of a challenge because most of these events are going to happen during the day, during business hours. So in the event that nothing on the calendar looks like it fits your schedule, call the law school, talk to someone in the office, and sometimes when we can't accommodate you at a program or for an individual class visit or tour, we may can arrange for you to meet with an alum or with a student on a Saturday. So all is not lost. There are still opportunities for you to connect with us.
Great. Dean Wang?
Yeah, I second all of that. Now, in this new age of virtual, engagement, if nothing else, I think we've had, many law schools have opened up many more opportunities, to engage outside of law fairs, law school forums. So absolutely, browse through our sites. If you wanted to connect with someone at the forum and you didn't get a chance to, highly recommend keep a short list, follow up after the forum and just, take a look at our website, see what's going on. And if nothing else, reach out to us. We always love to connect with you and however we can, and we will definitely make something happen.
Great. So now we're going to do examples of good and not so good questions. We won't call them bad, but we'll call them not as good questions. And we're going to cover some do's and don'ts for forum behavior. So I figure we'll do it this way. We'll have Dean Wang give us the good questions, and Director Nicholson will give us the not so good questions. And then we'll reverse it with Director Nicholson giving us the do's of forum behavior and Dean Wang giving us the don'ts of forum behavior. So let's start with Dean Wang with some really good forum questions.
I think a great one is to ask, what is your law school looking for, an admissions candidate, ideally? Some of the qualities, I think, there are many amazing law schools all across this country, of course, and, we're all looking for maybe something a little bit different, and it's, I think, oftentimes helpful to hear from a representative direct from the institution about some of the qualities that they hope to see in their top candidates. Another thing I think is great to talk about with a representative is what's the campus culture like? Some of those things that you can't, again, learn easily, just from looking at websites and looking at publications, just to get, a sense of what it's like, to see if it's exactly what you think it's going to be like, or if it's not, maybe ask some probing questions about, maybe you're a huge fitness buff and you want to know if you have access to certain, wellness or health or fitness activities or facilities, or maybe, it's really important to you to have access to, great, campus activities or student groups. Ask questions about those things. And then hopefully you can get some really good information that you can't, easily find anywhere else.
Okay, Director Nicholson, some questions that aren't so great.
So, questions that aren't so great is one thing you should never do or never say, in my opinion, is never come up to someone behind the table and say, sell me on your law school, right? Because that is not our jobs to sell you a product. Our job is to educate you about our program and help you see how you fit at our institution. So we will not sell you anything. The other thing, don'ts, is I would look beyond the surface questions. Like, we can tell you what our medians are all day. They're printed on the on our at a glance sheets or info sheets, whatever the schools want to call them. But you may want to ask a better question is, tell me about the range of your applicant pool. Who was considered a viable candidate based off of credentials in your applicant pool? Because, all of us go about reviewing our files different ways. Some of us have a holistic approach. Some of us are numerically driven. So to get a better understanding of how those numbers came to be is a better way to look at it.
Great. So before we jump into the forum behavior, which is obviously about sort of in-person forums, I do want to say that we saw in the Q&A box that there were some questions about the COVID protocol for the upcoming LSAC in-person forums. And we're going to have that information put into the chat box for the participants to see. But you can continue to ask your questions, obviously, if an answer isn't given, but a lot of it is there with a link to the webpage. Okay, so now we're going to move to the do's and don'ts for forum behavior. So on this, Director Nicholson, you were getting the do's.
So for the do's of the forum, will you meet a representative behind the table? Some of us may have our pronouns on our name badges or either additional sticker somewhere. You always want to address in the formal, never in the first, right? The same thing when you are communicating with follow-up from the forum, you always want to be in the forum. In the formal, because as I say to people, I'm not your best friend. We're not buddies. So Jimmy in the first sentence is probably not the best way to go about addressing me. So you have to remember this is a professional organization, and your meetings with individuals will be as such. Another good forum etiquette will be to, not move around stuff so much on people's tables, because some people, have a particular layout that they may have. And because it's COVID, they are probably trying to limit touching. So please don't feel offended if someone fist bumps you instead of shaking your hand, or do not do either one of those. So we're just trying to, keep you safe and keep ourselves safe.
Perfect. Dean Wang.
I get the fun ones. Don't, right? Well, I mean, when you asked this questions, the first thing that came to my mind was, don't ask us to compare ourselves to another institution. I feel like this is, this bears repeating, but again, going back to what Director Nicholson was saying, I mean, our job is not to sell you on a school. We're here to help you learn about our institutions. And so, right off the bat, when you ask us to tell you, why should I go to your school instead of X school? Not a great way to open that interaction. It's nothing that we want to spend our valuable time doing with you, right? Another thing that, comes to mind, especially in the in-person setting, is please don't interrupt. I mean, we all know that everyone is trying to, move things along, and sometimes tables there can be a wait, and we of course appreciate everyone's patience, but just please, be mindful of that. If someone's having a conversation with one representative and there's only one representative at the table, don't walk around them and start to, look at stuff and, interrupt things. It's okay maybe if you can do it a little bit like, sensitively, or maybe there's a sign-in sheet and you want to get to that. But just be mindful of others because, we would like to be able to focus and try to have a great conversation with someone the same way that we would like to do with you when it's your turn. So just be mindful of that, please.
Great. So that was mostly about in-person. Yes.
Can I just add on to that?
Yeah.
About being patient and being mindful, that means in the number of questions you have too. So you may want to think about what questions are good to be heard around other ears, and what questions should I ask in a follow-up conversation that is more intimate with less ears around.
Great, good advice. So let's shift a little bit to virtual forums and fairs. Are there some special considerations that students should be thinking about as they attend virtual platform events? Dean Wang?
Yes, I mean, so I think we all agree one of the loveliest things about being able to engage people virtually is that we can all do it, from the comfort of our own homes, our own spaces. And of course, that's wonderful, right? But with that, just, again, being mindful of your surroundings, your treat this like you would if you were interacting with this person and, one-on-one in person. You want to make sure that your room looks appropriate. You want to make sure that the space around you, I mean, keeping in mind, I understand that there's some home insecurity, but if you're not sure if your naked roommate's going to pass by after you, during this interaction, throw up that virtual background. Nothing wrong with that. You want to make sure that you have a private space, or at least that you're in a space that's presentable to have the conversation that you're looking to have. That said, too, just sort of, use your time wisely. Again, being mindful even in the virtual environment. I know that a lot of these conversations in the digital forum are happening like in a Zoom or a virtual meeting setting as well. So you want to make sure that you're, maybe listening in, but also giving others like a chance to be heard and ask their questions as well.
Great. Director Nicholson, what's your advice for virtual participation?
So I would pay attention to the law school's Zoom schedules. Many of us will post a Zoom link. Some of those Zooms may just be open. You could just pop in and there be somebody there to answer questions. But some schools will have an actual schedule, like from 2 to 3 p.m. you may meet with law students. From 3 to 4 p.m. maybe law faculty on the Zoom. From 5 to 6 p.m. maybe admissions professionals on the Zoom. So pay attention to if they have a schedule, because they give you different times to have different interactions. And some may just be doing, they may do a formal presentation via the Zoom and may not answer individual questions. So get to know what the schools are offering, on their Zoom links outside of the chats. The chats are good, but you can also do the Zoom presentations or individual sessions that law schools may have. The great thing about the digital is that I think you can visit way more schools, right? Because you have the option just to download stuff from each school's booth, right? So each of us have different type of documents that are uploaded, and you can kind of create your own little packet for yourself on each school. So it gives you time that if you don't have time to be in a Zoom or do a chat, you can just download information, and then we still get your information because you visited our booth, and we'll follow up with you. So I think you have an opportunity to see way more schools digitally.
That is great. So a question came up that you responded to earlier, but because it came up a few times and somebody's asking to discuss it again, has to do with attire. What's appropriate? And then it was mentioned even in this virtual setting. So let's take both of those now at the same time. In person, what's expected, and virtually, is it the same expectation? Dean Wang?
Yeah, I mean, I think neat is, sort of a guiding principle, right? But, you don't want to show up, of course, you wouldn't show up to like an interview in your gym close, right? So this is a setting, again, that you're trying to present yourself professionally and, hopefully making a lasting impression. You want us to remember you for for the conversation we had and not what you wore to this thing, right? So I would say in the in-person forum setting, anything between, a very neat casual to business casual to even business, isn't completely inappropriate. I know others may differ, but I think, in my opinion, it can never hurt to be too formal, sometimes. Um, in the virtual setting, again, I think it's the same principle governs, present yourself, neatly, professionally, and of course with your background keeping in mind as well. So, yeah.
Great. I love this question because I think this next question really is the question that everybody wants the answer to. So here it is. And Director Nicholson, it's coming to you. How much impact does attending a forum or reaching out to speak with a representative from the school have on the application decision?
It could be a lot depending on who's behind the table. So some representatives may or may not share with you if they're a file reviewer or not. But if that individual is a file reviewer, I'm just going to say I am a file reviewer, and I remember people who I met at forums or individual recruiting events at various campuses, or even at my law school. And those who've made a very strong impression on me, that can go a long way. So I say it could be very meaningful. And especially for individuals who may, I shouldn't say have a problematic file, but may have some challenges in their file, right? Because sometimes it's not that you're making your case for your file at the fair, but like when we meet you, we have a good interaction, and then there's follow-up. We know that there is strong interest in our individual law school. And more importantly, if I'm meeting with you and we've gotten to the point where I've started to give you feedback regarding stuff that you give it to me regarding your file, and I see that you put in the work and you made those changes, that is going to mean a lot to me too, because those individuals that I meet with and I give feedback and that I don't see any changes in the file, I'm like, okay. So because when we're giving you feedback, we're pretty much telling you this is what it's going to take to get admitted to our programs.
Dean Wang?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is that, regardless of who actually is behind the table too, it really is in your best interest to treat it like you are presenting yourself to an admissions committee, right? This is, again, like going to be a lasting impression, one hopes, right, at this forum interaction. So whether, if you act like the person behind you is going to be the one evaluating your application, I think that's probably a smart approach.
Great. So we've got a follow-up question to that. So don't go anywhere, Teen Wang. In your experience, do the Zoom meetings offer the same ability for the potential student to leave an impression as the in-person events?
Yes, absolutely. Again, just going back to, we've said it a few different times in different ways, but every single interaction from the moment you become a candidate for an institution can potentially have an impact on your candidacy, right? And so your approach to every interaction, whether it's a one-on-one Zoom meeting, a phone call, an engagement at a forum, if it's in person or digital, really is in your best interest to treat it like, be the professional that you hope to convey when you apply to this law school.
Great. So can either of you give an example of what might be considered a problem, an interaction at a forum that would then lead to a notation in a file, for example?
I'm happy to jump in here. I don't know if
do it.
So I recall one interaction a long time ago. It was just, I felt uncomfortable, with the questions that were being asked. I felt like they were a little bit too, personal and private, I should say, but really out of bounds for, what the forum is intended for. And that was a particular situation where I felt the need to, flag that. So, later on, if this person applied, I mean, again, remembering you for the wrong reasons, right? That I met you at a forum. This was a particular situation where I actually felt like that was appropriate.
Director Nicholson?
My response was going to be on the same lines of oversharing information or being too casual, like this is not the time for you to use profanity or racial slurs or things of that nature. Those are things that are even gender discriminatory terms, you want to be mindful of that.
Perfect. So let's move to some broader questions about sort of the forums themselves. So we'll have many students, candidates who will come to forums with a list of law schools, either short or long, that they know they want to visit those booths. Is that the way they should go about it? Should they just walk the aisles? Tell us a little bit about sort of not just at an individual booth, but how they should look at the forum as a whole. And Director Nicholson, you want to begin with that?
Sure. I kind of mentioned this before. You definitely, because this is not the old format of the forum where you had all 5 hours to peruse, because Director Wang will tell you we will see people who were there as soon as the doors open, and we're some of the last people to leave, right? They utilized all of their time. So you have a little bit more of a limited time, so you're going to have to be a lot more strategic. So definitely, make a list, but you're going to have to keep an open mind on that list. I often share with people, you should never approach a forum as, yeah, not if it's the last school on earth, or I would never live in Iowa. You don't know, you know what I mean? Who you may meet along the way, who may impress you. Or they may be something at that school in Iowa that you can do only there that you can't do anywhere else, right? So that may open up doors for you. Or Iowa, the school in Iowa may be the one that gives you the full tuition scholarship, but you don't know until you apply and get admitted. And so once you apply and admitted to programs, then you have choices and can narrow down that list and be more selective. So I think the scope of forums is to be able to broaden your horizons and think about law school beyond the 3 or 4 schools that you may know based off of reputation, rankings, pictures, or athletic programs. Being that I'm at a athletic-driven institution, I often share with people law school is where your athletic loyalties go to die, because sometimes you may end up at your rival institution for law school.
I love it. Dean Wang?
I love that. It's a great story. Yeah, I mean, just to build a little bit on that, I completely agree. Although if you have some idea of who you want to approach at the forum, and definitely make sure that you tackle those as a priority. I mean, one of the beauties of these LSAC sponsored events is that it's a very unique setting, right? You have more schools attending like in one place than maybe many other settings. And so you want to take advantage of that, you might learn stuff along the way, during the day through either questions that you ask or hear other people ask, or, and you learn, you know what, there are schools that have a certain kind of clinic and you didn't know that those schools, that existed. And you might want to maybe take another turn around the forum, whether it's browsing the halls digitally or in person, and see maybe what other schools have that kind of clinic. You just never know what you're going to learn at the forum that might help you, find some other schools that that weren't on your list when you joined. So keep an open mind.
Great. So I have a question. Director Nicholson mentioned following up after a forum. Is this appropriate? And if so, what is the most effective means of following up? Director Nicholson?
It is very appropriate. Sometimes the law schools will follow up with you first before you ever get to them, because usually we come back from these things and we download our form data and start to, communicate with students. But in the event that you want to reach out to them first, I think during this time of year, email is probably the best bet, because most of us are doing recruiting events and may not be accessible to our phones. So just shoot an email and you can say, hello, Director Nicholson. My name is Mimi. I met you at the Chicago Forum, and I just wanted to say I enjoyed what I learned and want to learn more, and whatever other questions that you have for that individual regarding their program, or if you just want to know how to arrange a visit, they will respond happily. Maybe not right away, so give us more than 48 hours. As I said, this is the heavy recruiting periods for all of us, but we will respond.
Dean Wang, anything to add?
Well, I mean, I think that's right. Especially, I mean, in the case if you didn't get to connect with the school that you were hoping to meet, that's especially important, because it's usually just a time thing. We all wanted to meet you. We all were hoping to have a chance to talk to you. So in some cases, having a follow-up email after from you directly is a great way for us to continue that conversation. Right.
There's a question about sort of prioritizing which schools to visit at a forum. And I know that Director Nicholson mentioned before, especially because we're going to be in more of a time constrained situation with the forums, with a limited amount of time at school booths, that maybe don't visit the booths of the local schools, right? That makes sense because you could get to them. Is there any other advice that either of you can give about sort of prioritizing that list? I mean, the truth is there will be some schools with probably lines in front of them. And so what do you think makes sense in terms of how a student might attack that prioritization? Dean Wang?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what's a great way to plan this. I mean, so if I were attending a forum and I knew that, that could be an issue, I think it might be worthwhile to spend a little bit of time, on the front end, looking at some of our websites, seeing if there might be further opportunities. This is a heavy recruitment season for us, and many of us have other activities going on before and after the forums. Maybe if it's a school that you are really interested, want to speak to, but they have, let's say, an info session that following week, or there's an opportunity for you to make an appointment. Maybe, shuffle that one down on the list a little bit. Another thing I can think of is that, as, Director Nicholson mentioned before, we capture a lot of information from capturing your L number, at these forums. And so there's opportunities for us to follow up with you as well. So if you are very short on time, the very least that you can do is swing by our tables or come to our booth and leave a footprint, or, let us record your number. And that'll ensure that we also connect with you after as well. It's not the end of the world, but obviously these forums, unfortunately, have limitations. So.
Okay, let's move on to a question or two because we're in the final 10 minutes. Let me see. There was a question in here. If a school is your first choice, should you say you're my first choice, or is that too desperate sounding? Director Nicholson? Director Nicholson?
Oh, me. Okay. I was still laughing at, is that too desperate? I'm like, interesting choice of words there. No, I mean, schools were always excited to hear that we're your first choice. But if you say it meaning, don't go to Mimi's table next, but like, you're my first choice, right? Because some people do that because they think, it's going to make them a more attractive candidate. But if you come to a table and you say your school is at the top of my list, be prepared to answer why, because that's going to be my next question. So how do we make it to the top of your list, right? So versus the reverse of how can I get my school to be at the top of your list, right? So be prepared to answer that question. And in that question response, if you really want to impress the person behind the table, make sure that response is more than the surface level, meaning regurgitating back to me stuff that's written on my website that I probably wrote. Yeah, so, maybe it's your interactions, maybe it's a particular program, maybe it's a particular faculty member that you've been on their podcast, you've watched their blogs, or maybe it's a particular subject area, or maybe it's because it's where the school is geographically located. It's a place that you're trying to go to. You could use a whole host of other things versus, it's ranked this high, or, it's my favorite football team, so there's a whole host of other things that you want to say. We would never hear that in Kentucky, that it's our favorite football team, because we're not football school. We're trying to be though.
All right, Dean Wang, I got another one for you. Would it be appropriate to ask representatives at the forums if they are or have been file reviewers? For example, asking them what positive or negative indicators they generally noticed on incoming applications in the past?
I mean, I think every school might, every representative might respond to this a little bit differently. I think it's up to them whether or not they're comfortable sharing that with you. I think it's okay to ask, but of course, do it sensitively and tactfully, in a way that's professional. And so, yeah, I think it could help you frame, your discussion a little bit through your conversation. But I do think it's like sort of a case by case basis, whether or not a school is going to share that with you.
So there's, yeah,
I would frame that question a different way. I wouldn't just ask, are you a file reviewer? So getting to what Dean Wang was saying is that you want to phrase that question of who serves on that admissions committee. And in that response, they may be very broad and tell you it's primarily faculty, or they may say my admissions committee is comprised of myself and several others. You know what I mean? So that will be the way to phrase that question.
Great. All right, I love this question. Is it appropriate to say, this is my school because it is financially manageable? Director Nicholson?
I say yes, because debt is real. And you want to be very conscious of your debt. Law school is very expensive. This is a very expensive degree. And unlike undergrad, not everybody's going to get a full ride or a partial scholarship, to attend the program. So that is definitely something you want to keep in mind when choosing your law schools. However, you don't want it to be the 100% driver of why you're choosing a law school, because I think what you should be concerned with that is equally as important as keeping your debt down is if you are a good fit. Now, I do not have a law degree, but I've been working in legal education for over 15 years. I've been able to observe law students, and I can tell when students are not a good fit and they're just struggling with being here because they're not bonding with the students, they're not bonding with the faculty, they're not engaged in the community at all. So, but you want this to be as an enjoyable experience as law school could possibly be. And you want to walk away from this place with good networks because you have no idea where your classmates are going to end up at and who you may need in the future.
Dean Wang, anything to add to that?
I mean, I think it's, as Director Nicholson said, it's a reality, right? Like law school has a cost and many different kinds of costs. Financial is just one of them, of course. But, my only thing that I would add is that, don't let that be the entire conversation, right? Like you want to have an interaction that's productive and that you both benefit from. So while that could be a primary driving factor while you're considering this law school, make sure that you make sure all the other things that are going to be, critical to you being successful, feeling supported, feeling that you have all the things you need to do, need in order to do your best work in the law school are there as well. So yes, finance is very important, but all the other stuff is just as important.
Perfect.
I think if you're going to be using finances as a driver to have a conversation with the representative, you should ask about scholarships and how they work at that school and what's the attrition of scholarships. And then the second thing I will ask about is cost of living, because while you may have an affordable scholarship, you may be in a high rent district for that particular law school, and you're going to want to know how that plays out financially.
Perfect. So we're in our final 5 minutes. So I thought what we would do for the end of this is have each of you share with our participants, if you can think of the most memorable forum interaction that you had, and maybe it's a good memory of somebody who maybe then came to your school or something along those lines. Maybe it's a not as good memory of somebody who stood out for less than good reasons. I'll give you just like 1 second to think about it, and then who's ever can come up with it first, just raise your hand and we'll get you going.
I have one I can
Okay,
share.
Dean Wang, you're up.
It's very recent. That's why, back in a few years ago when there were more forums in different locations in person, I had the pleasure of meeting a candidate, at the Miami event. And it was frankly a long time ago. And in missions world too, the years just kind of fly by. They're longer than regular years, right? In my opinion, a little bit. But and this past year I had the pleasure of reading his application. And so many people we meet so many great people that it's not necessarily a name that would ring a bell right away, but they wrote about that interaction, in their application saying like, hey, look, I went there exploring the idea of law school. I wasn't sure what I wanted at the time, but I attended this, forum in XYZ year and I met this person. And, they talked about how that interaction led them sort of down this path of researching more about my law school. And it was sort of one of those, is great tie back to, Director Nicholson's opening thing about how her favorite thing is to connect up an experience where she met a candidate at a law school forum one time, and then they became a law student at your school. So, I mean, beautiful, lovely memory. That person is now a law student in the recent incoming class. And it's just, it's a perfect summary of why we do these things.
That's great. Director Nicholson?
I have so many fond memories from so many fond forums that I've attended. And I was trying not to use the Miami forum, but I'm going to use the Miami forum because this is probably one of my better stories. So I met a young man a couple of years ago at the Miami forum who had to walk past my table at least 5 times. And each time he walked by, he kind of looked at my banner, looked at me, then looked back down and kept going. But on that 5th time, I was like, okay, you're not going to walk past my table again and look at me and keep going. So we're going to have this conversation. So, and we did. And lo and behold, that person applied to my program, enrolled in this program, brought his South Florida swag to, I'm going to call Kentucky the Midwest because I'm from New Orleans. So it's not the real South to me. Brought his, South Florida swag to the Midwest, and he did very well here, got a job, waiting to hear if he passed the bar, and probably one of my favorite law students since I've been at the law school.
Great. Well, those are terrific stories. I want to thank Director Nicholson and Dean Wang for joining us today in this terrific conversation. I hope that was helpful in getting everybody ready for forums, and I hope to see you all at the upcoming LSAC forums. Best of luck, everybody.
Visit lsac.org to learn more.